Sometimes it starts with something small, a drawer half open, a document missing, a question asked just a little too casually. That night, I wasn't planning to uncover anything. I certainly wasn't prepared for what I'd find. But as the hours passed and the clues unraveled, I realized I had stepped into something much bigger than a missing savings book. It was a story about love, desperation, silence, and the kind of courage that lives quietly in the hearts of our children. If you've ever discovered something that made you question how well you truly know the ones you love, then this story is for you. Stay with me through to the end because the twist you're about to hear is one I never saw coming. And if it moves you in any way, let me know your thoughts below. I read every comment. Don't forget to like and share this with someone who believes in second chances. It was supposed to be just another quiet Thursday evening, the kind where the hum of the television fills the background while you sip tea and let the day slip gently into night. But something subtle and barely noticeable had been bothering me all day, a gnawing itch in the back of my mind that wouldn't go away. It wasn't until I walked past the wooden bookshelf in the hallway, the one where we kept all our important documents, that the feeling sharpened. I paused. My feet stopped on their own, and my eyes lingered on the second drawer, half open, as if someone had recently rummaged through it. Strange. That drawer hadn't been opened in weeks. I bent down and pulled it open the rest of the way. Neatly stacked folders stared back at me, all labeled in my handwriting: insurance, wills, certificates, and there it was, savings books. A small bundle, rubber banded together, containing the passbooks for every member of the household, including my grandson Nathan's. I pulled them out with routine ease. My own book was there, my daughter's, my late husband's, but Nathan's? Gone. A chill passed through me. I rechecked. I flipped every book over, pulled each folder out of the drawer and examined them one by one. Nothing. Nathan's book had vanished. My heart began to thud with a dull, uneasy rhythm. I told myself it was probably misplaced, perhaps taken out for a school project or for some paperwork with his parents, but why hadn't he said anything? And then, as if lightning had illuminated a dark corner of my memory, I remembered something Nathan had said last week, just in passing. Grandma, what would happen if someone needed money really fast, like for something important, but they didn't want to ask anyone? At the time, I laughed it off. I thought it was just a teenage question about life, like so many he asked when he was lost in thought. But now, that question echoed like a warning siren in my head. It wasn't hypothetical. He was fishing for answers. I just hadn't seen it. And now the book was gone. I stood in the hallway, holding the empty folder in my hand, trying to decide whether this was an overreaction or a real problem. But then, something else clicked. 3 days ago, I had gone to the kitchen to grab a glass of water and heard Nathan's voice from the living room. He was on the phone. His tone was hushed and urgent. I couldn't make out the words, but one thing was clear. He didn't want anyone to hear him. When I asked him about it, he smiled too quickly and said it was just Josh from school. But Nathan never whispers with Josh. Their calls are loud and full of laughter and stupid jokes. That night, there was no laughter, only silence when I walked in. A wave of anxiety swept over me. Something wasn't right. I went to his room, knocked lightly. No answer. I peeked and he wasn't home. Out studying, supposedly. But his laptop was still open on his desk, the screen still glowing faintly. I stepped inside, almost unwillingly, as if some force was pulling me deeper into something I didn't want to find. I didn't touch the laptop. That wasn't my right. But I scanned the room. His desk drawer was unlocked. Inside, notebooks, pens, and a folded paper with ATM transactions scribbled in pencil amounts withdrawn, balance notes, strange symbols. It looked like someone had been tracking withdrawals on paper. My pulse quickened. Was he in trouble? Was someone blackmailing him? Was he helping someone else? I sat down on his bed and stared at the note, willing it to give me an answer. And then I remembered something else the last weekend. Nathan had gone out earlier than usual on Saturday morning. He'd said he was heading to the community center to volunteer, which wasn't uncommon, but when I offered to drive him, he declined. No, Grandma, I'm good. I'm meeting a friend nearby first. I didn't think much of it then, but now, in hindsight, it felt orchestrated. It felt like a lie. Why would he lie? I stared at the note again. One of the figures had been circled. It was the largest amount on the list, 5 million dong. That might not seem like much to some, but to a teenager, to Nathan it was nearly everything in his account. My hands trembled. I got up, returned the paper exactly where I found it, and slowly backed out of the room. I didn't want to believe it, but the facts were stacking up like dominoes, and I knew that once the final one fell, something irreversible would happen. This wasn't just a missing booklet. This was a warning, a secret unraveling at the seams. I needed answers, but I also needed to tread carefully. If I went to his parents too soon, it might escalate unnecessarily. If I confronted him directly without proof, I might shatter a trust that had taken years to build. And yet, if I stayed silent, this secret, whatever it was, could spiral beyond our control. That night, I barely slept. I kept hearing his question in my head, what if someone needed money really fast? And the way his voice trembled when he said it. I thought about the phone call, the sudden trips, the scribbled figures, and the missing savings book. And I knew, deep in my bones, that this wasn't just a phase or a prank. Nathan had done something. The question was, what? And more importantly, why? That question, unanswered, pulsed in my chest like a drumbeat into the early morning hours. As the clock struck midnight and the rest of the house had surrendered to sleep, I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring blankly into my cup of tea that had long since gone cold. The unanswered question gnawed at me from every corner of the quiet room. What had Nathan done, and where was the missing savings book? I had raised children. I had navigated financial hardships. I had stood by hospital beds and attended too many funerals. But nothing prepared me for this particular fear. The fear that someone I loved deeply might be hiding something devastating. I rose quietly, careful not to creak the floorboards. If there was ever a time to investigate, it was now. While the world was asleep and secrets still dared to breathe, I retraced my steps to the family study where we kept our old files. I didn't want to believe the worst, but I also knew in life, denial was a luxury that often led to disaster. I pulled out the folders again, slowly, meticulously. Maybe I had missed something earlier. Maybe Nathan had slipped the passbook into another envelope. My hands moved with the nervous energy of someone both dreading and needing to find the truth. But there was nothing. Every document was accounted for. Every paperclip in its place. Every folder intact except Nathan's book. Suddenly, my mind jumped to a memory from years ago. My late husband had once built a small compartment in our bedroom wardrobe. It wasn't meant to hide things maliciously, just a space to keep valuables safer than in plain drawers. I hadn't thought about it in ages. Maybe, just maybe, Nathan had found it. I tiptoed upstairs and slipped into the bedroom. Moonlight poured through the window like silver smoke, faintly illuminating the wooden wardrobe. I opened it slowly, pushing past old scarves and jackets I hadn't worn in years. My hands groped along the back panel until they felt the faint groove. I pressed it gently and, with a soft pop, the hidden panel released. There it was, a wooden box. Dusty, heavy, locked. My breath caught in my throat. It took a few seconds for me to recall where the key was. I hadn't used it since my husband passed. I crossed the room and opened the drawer of his old desk. Inside, still wrapped in yellow tissue paper, was the tiny brass key. I returned to the wardrobe, inserted the key into the lock, and turned it. Click. The lid creaked open. My eyes scanned the contents. There were faded family photos, an envelope of old cash, and beneath the Mise Nathan savings book. I grabbed it with both hands, heart pounding, then carried it carefully to the bedside lamp and switched on the light. My fingers trembled as I flipped open the first page. What I saw made me go still. The balance had been altered. The account that once held over 8 million dong now showed less than 2. My throat tightened. Page by page, I tracked the withdrawals. They hadn't been spaced out. They were clustered 3 large amounts over the course of 2 weeks. The dates were recent, very recent. I flipped to the back where signatures for withdrawals were logged. That's when I saw it. The handwriting was off. It looked similar, yes, but it wasn't Nathan's. I had seen my grandson's writing 100 times on birthday cards and thank you notes. This was careful, deliberate, a mimic, not the real thing. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, the book clutched in my hands like a crime scene photograph. My mind raced. If it wasn't Nathan who forged this, then who had access to the book? And why hide it in the old compartment instead of putting it back? Unless he didn't know it was hidden there. Unless someone more calculating put it there after using it. My stomach churned. There were only a few people who knew about that hidden box. Myself, my husband, my daughter, possibly. But Nathan? No. I never told him about it. He wasn't even born when we built it. That meant someone else had gone to great lengths to hide their tracks. I turned the savings book over, hoping for some kind of clue, and that's when I noticed something small but unmistakable wedged into the inside of the cover. A receipt half crumpled, hastily tucked away. I pulled it out and unfolded it. It was from a pawn shop in the outskirts of town. The name on the receipt was smeared, but the date matched one of the withdrawal entries. My breath caught. Why would anyone withdraw money and then go to a pawn shop? I grabbed my phone and took a photo of the receipt. My mind was spinning now. Could it be my daughter? Her husband? Could they have needed money badly enough to quietly use Nathan's savings and hope no one would notice? Or was it something worse? Was Nathan being manipulated by someone? My fingers hovered over my phone screen. I wanted to call someone to demand answers, but deep down, I knew I wasn't ready. Not until I had more proof. Not until I could speak to Nathan himself and look him in the eyes. A creak in the hallway snapped me to attention. I closed the savings book quickly and returned it to the box. My heart hammered as I turned off the light and slipped quietly out of the room, easing the door shut behind me. Footsteps padded softly down the hall, Nathan's. He was just getting home. I ducked into the shadows of the kitchen and watched silently as he entered the house. He looked tired. His backpack was slung lazily over one shoulder. He didn't see me. He headed straight upstairs, his face solemn, lost in thought. I waited until I heard his door close before stepping out. That night, I couldn't sleep. The savings book, the forged signatures, the pawn shop receipt was all becoming too much. But it wasn't just the fear of money lost. It was the heartbreak of secrets kept. I had always believed Nathan trusted me. We were close. We shared Sunday breakfast and walked together every evening. But now, that trust felt threadbare. And more than anything, I needed to know the truth before the lies did any more damage. And so, I made up my mind. Tomorrow morning, I would confront him not with anger, but with calm, unwavering honesty. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing in a family isn't the mistake itself, it's the silence that follows. Morning arrived with a heaviness in the air that felt almost biblical. The kind of morning where nothing is truly quiet, only deceptively still, as if the very walls are holding their breath for what's to come. I sat by the window with my coffee untouched, watching the clouds roll in, the sky wearing a gray coat that mirrored the storm building in my chest. I had barely slept. Every sound Nathan made upstairs his door creaking, the water running, the floorboards groaning under his footsteps only made the truth feel closer, more inescapable. By the time he came down for breakfast, I had rehearsed my words a dozen different ways, but none of them felt right. When he walked into the kitchen, he wore the same expression he always did, polite, reserved, faintly amused by the slowness of mornings. But now I saw it differently. That smile didn't quite reach his eyes. It was a mask. Or maybe it always had been, and I'd simply never noticed. I motioned for him to sit. "Nathan, we need to talk," I said, keeping my voice even. He blinked. "About what?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached into the drawer beside me and slowly laid the savings book on the table between us. His eyes darted to it. For the first time in weeks, I saw real panic flash across his face, gone as quickly as it came, replaced by a painfully practiced calm. He leaned back. Where did you find that?" In the hidden compartment your grandfather built, the one you don't know exists. Silence. Just the faint ticking of the wall clock behind us. Nathan, I said quietly. 3 large withdrawals. One of them just days ago. Forged signatures. A pawn shop receipt. I need you to tell me the truth. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. For a moment he looked like he might lie, but then the tension in his shoulders dropped. The mask crumbled, and just like that, he started to cry. The kind of crying you don't fake. He put his hands over his face and shook his head, like a dam finally giving way. My heart twisted painfully. I reached across the table, gently touching his arm. Whatever it is, you don't have to go through it alone. Between gasping sobs, the truth came out haltingly, like shards of broken glass being pulled from a wound. It's not what you think, he said. I didn't steal it. I did take it, but not for me. He paused, drawing in a trembling breath. It's for Leo. Leo, his best friend. A quiet, sweet boy I'd seen around the house more times than I could count. The two of them had been inseparable since middle school, shared the same birthday, played the same games, even finished each other's sentences. I never imagined the reason I hadn't seen Leo in weeks would tie into this. Nathan, what happened to him? I asked, feeling dread creep into my throat like smoke. He didn't want anyone to know, Nathan said, voice barely above a whisper. His parents got evicted last month. They didn't say anything to the school. They were too embarrassed. They'd been sleeping in their car near the old gas station across town. I froze. I had heard of families slipping through the cracks like that. One missed paycheck could spiral into catastrophe, but it never felt real until it hit this close to home. Nathan continued. Leo was scared they'd get reported and he'd end up in foster care. He begged me not to tell anyone. I couldn't just do nothing, Grandma, so I took the book. I figured you wouldn't notice right away. I thought if I just got them through a few weeks, helped them get a motel or something, it wouldn't matter. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My mind reeled with the magnitude of what he'd done. A 16-year-old boy, breaking a sacred family rule, committing forgery not out of greed, but loyalty. Compassion. Misguided, yes, but breathtakingly selfless. But the pawn shop? I asked. Why go there? He wiped his face with the sleeve of his hoodie. I tried giving them cash directly, but Leo's dad wouldn't take it, said it wasn't right, that they didn't want handouts. So I pawned my gaming console and said I sold it to a collector. Then I gave them the money from that, not the bank. But when that ran out, I panicked. I made a second withdrawal, and then a third. He looked down, ashamed. I know I should have told you. I was scared. And suddenly, I wasn't angry anymore. I was devastated. Because what kind of world forces a child to choose between betraying his family and saving his best friend? What kind of systems are we living in, where teenagers have to carry burdens meant for grown men with briefcases and cold hearts? I took his hand in mine and squeezed it. You made a mistake, I said, but you did it with a heart that's better than most adults I know. His eyes welled up again, but this time, he didn't look away. We sat like that for a long time, just two people, across generations, tethered by blood and heartbreak and an awful, unavoidable truth. Eventually, I told him we had to come clean to his parents, that there would be consequences, but also understanding, that we'd find a way to help Leo's family, but not in secrecy. That trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild, but not impossible. He nodded, and for the first time in weeks, I saw the boy I'd always known return the light behind the eyes, the quiet integrity, the goodness not yet corrupted by this harsh, complicated world. What Nathan didn't know yet, but would soon learn, is that sometimes the most jaw-dropping outcome isn't the betrayal or the loss. It's the capacity of a person to love so deeply, they'd risk everything for someone they care about. And that is what made the night I tracked down that savings book not a tragedy, but a turning point. But as with all truths, no matter how noble their intent, they demand a reckoning. And that reckoning came faster than either of us expected. The very next evening, I sat with Nathan in the living room, the savings book resting between us like a loaded weapon. He fidgeted beside me on the couch, eyes flicking between the front door and the grandfather clock that ticked down the minutes until his parents would arrive home. I could feel the fear rising off him in waves, not the fear of punishment, but the fear of disappointing people who believed he was still their perfect, obedient son. When the key finally turned in the lock and his mother and father walked in, the air in the room shifted. I stood slowly, heart pounding, and greeted them with a nod. My daughter gave me a tired smile, her husband murmuring a hello, but when they noticed the tension in our posturan, the book in my hands, their steps faltered. "Mom?" she asked. "What's going on?" I didn't answer immediately. I sat down and gestured for them to join us. Nathan swallowed hard, his voice barely audible. "I need to tell you something." The confession came out more quickly than I thought it would, perhaps because holding it in any longer had become unbearable. He told them everything: the missing book, the forged signature, the pawn shop, the withdrawals, and finally, the reason behind it all. Leo and his family, the car they slept in, the quiet desperation they lived with. Nathan's voice trembled, but he didn't falter. He looked them in the eyes when he spoke. At first, there was silence. A silence so thick it seemed to stop the clocks, to dim the lamps, to close the very walls around us. My daughter sat rigid, face unreadable. Her husband leaned forward, elbows on knees, hands clasped tight. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. You forged our signatures?" Her tone was not angry, but something worse wounded. "I had to," Nathan said quietly. "They needed help, and no one else would." She shook her head. "Nathan, do you have any idea what you've done? That money was saved for your future. University. Emergencies. You didn't have the right." "Did I have the right to let them freeze in a car?" he interrupted, louder now. "To ignore them while I sat in a warm room with dinner on the table? What kind of person would that make me?" His father stood abruptly. "It makes you a child who broke the law," he snapped. "You don't get to decide how this family's money is used. You think the world is that simple? That being kind justifies stealing?" Nathan's fist clenched in his lap. "I didn't steal. I helped." "Helped?" his mother echoed, her voice rising. "By lying? Forging signatures? Using your grandmother's trust? Do you have any idea what could have happened if someone reported this?" "But no one did," Nathan fired back. "No one even noticed until Grandma found out. And Shesh understood. She actually listened." All eyes turned to me. I met their gazes steadily, because I saw his heart, I said, and I saw his pain. He made a terrible mistake, yes, but he did it out of something very few people are brave enough to act on: empathy. "But where's the line, Mom?" my daughter demanded. "If we don't draw it now, what stops it from happening again? What stops him or anyone else from doing something wrong for the right reason again and again until there are no rules left?" The room grew hot with tension. The lines were drawn, two camps divided not by love but by principle. And in the center sat Nathan, too old to hide, too young to stand alone. "I get it," Nathan said, eyes shining. "You're disappointed. You should be. But if I had to do it all over again, I think I still would. Because Leo's family has heat now. They have food. His mom even got a job interview because they finally had an address to use." His father looked away. My daughter looked like she might cry. And then, unexpectedly, her voice softened. "I'm not angry because you helped them, Nathan," she said. "I'm angry because you didn't trust us to help too. Because you thought you had to carry it all alone. Do you know how that feels? As a parent?" The words hit Nathan like a punch. "I didn't think you'd say yes," he murmured. "I thought you'd tell me it wasn't our business, that we couldn't get involved." She swallowed hard. "Maybe we would have, but maybe not. You never gave us the chance." Silence returned, a different kind this time, heavier but quieter. Finally, I stood, breaking the spell. "This is not just about right or wrong," I said. "It's about how we respond now. Nathan needs to take responsibility, but he also needs to be heard. We can't punish compassion out of our children. We can only shape it." Her husband exhaled slowly, finally sitting back down. "So what do we do?" I turned to Nathan. "We go to the bank tomorrow. You explain what happened. If there are legal consequences, we face them together. But we also help Leo's family with dignity and transparency. You can't fix this alone, Nathan, but you don't have to anymore. He nodded, a single tear slipping down his cheek. Thank you. In the hours that followed, the house slowly began to breathe again, no longer choking on secrets or buried panic, but learning to inhale something else truth, even when it hurt. We didn't resolve everything that night. There were still discussions to have, boundaries to restore, trust to rebuild. But beneath all the frayed edges, one thing had begun to stitch us back together: understanding. Sometimes, the most powerful confrontations are not about blame, they're about what comes next. And for the first time in days, I believe we had a future that could hold all our mistakes and still move forward. In the days that followed, the house felt different. Not shattered, not broken, but splintered, like glass under pressure still intact, still standing, but marked by fine spreading cracks. There were no shouting matches or slammed doors, no dramatic ultimatums, no one stormed out or packed bags, and yet the air was thick with the kind of silence that doesn't soothe, but separates. Everyone was cautious careful with their words, tiptoeing around conversations like they were mines that hadn't yet gone off. My daughter, once so expressive, now moved about the house with clipped efficiency. She set plates on the table with more force than necessary. She asked Nathan about school without looking up from her phone. Her husband, usually opinionated and loud during dinner debates, now nodded more than he spoke, retreating into a stoic quiet that said everything without saying a word. And Nathan, he was trying, but I could see the guilt wearing him down. He smiled less, spoke in short sentences, and spent more time than usual alone in his room. It wasn't punishment. It was the aftermath of a moral earthquake. Everyone was trying to rebuild, but each of them had their own blueprint for what was right. One evening, 4 days after the confession, I found myself in the garden pulling weeds I didn't even care about, hoping the act would quiet my mind. That's when Nathan came outside, hands stuffed in his hoodie pocket, and asked if he could sit beside me. We sat in silence for a while, the cool dusk air wrapping around us like a shared blanket neither of us asked for. I didn't think it would feel like this, he said finally. Like what? Like I ruined something. I sighed, putting down my gardening gloves. You didn't ruin anything, Nathan. You just uncovered parts of us we hadn't looked at closely in a long time. He stared out at the hedges. I thought once they knew why I did it, they'd understand. They do, I said gently, but understanding isn't the same as agreeing. And sometimes people need time to process both the hurt and the love in the same breath. He frowned. I wanted to help. You did, I nodded. But you also reminded this family that helping isn't always simple. You forced us to ask questions we don't like answering about trust, about control, about compassion and consequence. And that's uncomfortable, but necessary. Nathan looked at me then, eyes clearer than they had been all week. Do you think they'll forgive me? I smiled, brushing a leaf from his shoulder. They already have. They're just learning how to show it. And slowly, they did. It started in small ways. His father, without saying a word, replaced Nathan's pawned gaming console with a second-hand model he quietly picked up the next Saturday. My daughter baked Nathan's favorite muffins and left them outside his door with a sticky note that simply read, "Still proud of you." Nathan, in turn, started joining them for dinner again, volunteering details about his day, asking about theirs. No one pushed for deep talks. No one reopened old wounds. But the language of love returned haltingly, humbly. Then came the visit. On a rainy Sunday afternoon, all 5 of us drove across town to the motel where Leo and his family had been staying. The plan was simple: offer help officially, together. No secrets, no hidden money, just one family extending their hands to another. What we found there brought the storm back into my chest. Leo's father, a man whose pride had once kept him silent, broke down in tears when he saw Nathan step out of the car. "You saved my son," he whispered, clutching his hand like a lifeline. His mother embraced us all, even before we said a word. They had found a place to rent a tiny flat with peeling wallpaper but solid plumbing and enough space to breathe. All they needed now was a small bridge fund to get through the next month. We offered it, but not as charity. As neighbors, as people who had also made mistakes, also struggled, also loved. As the family spoke and laughter began to stitch itself into the cold, damp afternoon, I saw something shift in my daughter's face. She looked at Leo's mother with quiet recognition, perhaps thinking, that could have been us, if one thing had gone differently. Her husband knelt to help Leo's little sister pick up a toy she had dropped in the mud. Nathan stood with Leo, the two boys talking animatedly like old friends rediscovering their rhythm. Later, on the drive home, no one spoke for a while. But the silence wasn't heavy this time. It was reflective. Finally, my daughter turned to Nathan. I still don't agree with how you did it, she said, her tone firm but warm, but I'm proud of the heart that made you try. Nathan blinked, stunned. His father added, and you're grounded for 2 weeks. No devices after 9. But I'd still call that a fair deal. Nathan grinned. I'll take it. We all laughed. And just like that, something healed. Not perfectly, not all at once, but honestly, the experience didn't just change how we viewed Nathan, it changed how we viewed each other. We realized that love isn't about perfection, it's about presence. About being willing to have the uncomfortable conversations, to sit in the tension, to choose each other anyway. Later that night, as I was preparing for bed, Nathan knocked on my door. Thanks for believing me, he said, standing in the hallway in his slippers, looking younger than his age and older than his years all at once. I always will, I replied, because what you did, no matter how messy, came from a place this world desperately needs more of. He nodded, turned to go, then paused. Grandma? Yes? If I ever do something stupid again, will you help me fix it? I chuckled softly. Yes, my love, but let's try not to make a habit of it. And with that, he disappeared into the quiet of the house, leaving me with a full heart and the distant, comforting sound of his footsteps fading into the night. Some stories don't end with a twist. Some end with a truth. And sometimes, the most jaw-dropping outcomes aren't explosions of betrayal or scandal, but the quiet return of trust, rebuilt one brave confession at a time. That night changed us, not just Nathan, not just me, but all of us. We didn't walk away with everything tied up in a neat little bow. Real families don't work that way. But we did walk away with something stronger than rules or consequences. We walked away with understanding. The kind that hurts at first, but heals deeper than you expect. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of a moment where love and conflict collided in your own life, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have handled it differently? Hit that like button if you believe that sometimes the hardest truths reveal the strongest bonds, and don't forget to subscribe if you want more real stories that reach into the quiet corners of family, forgiveness, and the things we learn when we listen. Thank you for staying with me. This one was personal.